Number 1, Mike Tyson. At 75, the most feared man who ever stepped into a boxing ring no longer talks about knockouts first. He talks about silence. There was a time when Mike Tyson didn't just beat opponents, he erased them. 30 seconds, 1 round. Sometimes less. Crowds came not to watch a fight, but to witness destruction. But now, decades later, Tyson admits the one thing he couldn't destroy was his own past. He has said the money didn't matter, the belts didn't matter, even becoming the youngest heavyweight champion in history didn't fill the hole that started the night Cus D'Amato died. Cus wasn't just a trainer, he was structure, discipline, a father figure who kept the chaos locked outside the ropes. After he was gone, Tyson didn't just lose guidance, he lost direction. And that's the regret that still haunts him. Not a loss in the ring, not Buster Douglas, not prison. His real regret is simple and painful. He wishes he had listened more and lived less recklessly when he still had someone trying to protect him from himself. Tyson has openly admitted that fame came too fast for a teenager who had never experienced stability. Millions of dollars, no boundaries, no mentor strong enough to replace Cus, and in that storm he became the very thing he now says he hates. A man driven by anger instead of purpose. He's talked about the nights he can't sleep, not because of opponents, but because he remembers the people he pushed away, the discipline he abandoned, and the version of himself that could have been greater than just the baddest man on the planet. Tyson's regret isn't about losing fights, it's about losing time. Our time he can't get back. Years he says he spent being controlled by rage, ego, and people who benefited from his downfall. Today, when he speaks calmly, almost softly, it feels like a different person from the one who terrified the world. And that contrast is the haunting part, because Mike Tyson didn't just defeat champions, he defeated the best version of himself. And at 75, that's the opponent he still hasn't beaten. Agar flow pasand hai to bolo mein number 2 legend likhta hun, 400 words, or zyada shocking regret ke saath. Number 2, Muhammad Ali. At 75, the loudest voice boxing ever heard is remembered for poetry, confidence, and defiance. I am the greatest, he said, and the world believed him. But behind the legend, Muhammad Ali carried a regret that had nothing to do with losing to Joe Frazier, and everything to do with what boxing took from him. For years, Ali insisted he had no fear, not of Sonny Liston, not of George Foreman, not of any man alive, but late in life, when his speech slowed and Parkinson's disease stole the rhythm that once made him untouchable, he admitted something deeply personal. He wondered if staying in the ring too long cost him the one thing he could never fight back for, his health. Ali kept fighting past his prime, past the speed, past the reflexes, past the version of himself that floated like a butterfly. The wars with Frazier, the punishment from Ken Norton, the brutal rounds in Manila, and then the later fights when the greatness was already fading, but the legend was too big to stop. And he once said he loved boxing, but boxing didn't love him back. That was the regret. Not the losses, not the politics, not the exile from the sport in his prime. It was the realization that he gave everything to the ring, and the ring took something permanent in return. People saw the Olympic gold medal, the heavyweight titles, the global fame, the man who stood up to governments and changed culture. But Ali, in quieter moments, spoke about time. Time with his children when he could still move freely. Time when he could speak without effort. Time before every step required strength. He never publicly blamed boxing with bitterness. That wasn't his style, but those close to him revealed that he often reflected on whether walking away earlier would have changed his final years. That question never had an answer. And that's what made it a regret, because for a man who predicted every round, who called every knockout, who controlled every narrative, this was the one outcome he couldn't predict, couldn't control, and couldn't reverse. Muhammad Ali conquered opponents, governments, and history itself. But at 75, his greatest fight was with time. And it was the only one he knew he couldn't win. Bolo arrow number 3, legend kis boxer par chahiye? Main usko or zyada dark, emotional or shocking regret ke sat likhunga. Number 3, George Foreman. At 75, George Foreman smiles more than he ever did as champion. The man once known as the most intimidating puncher in boxing history now talks about peace, faith, and second chances. But there is one memory that still follows him, the night in Zaire when everything changed. So the rumble in the jungle wasn't just a loss to Muhammad Ali. It was the moment Foreman says he lost his identity. Before that fight, he was unstoppable. Knockouts stacked like numbers. Opponents didn't go the distance. They survived as long as they could. He believed power was enough, that fear was respect, that destruction was greatness. And then Ali leaned on the ropes, absorbed the punches, and watched Foreman exhaust himself. When Foreman fell, it wasn't just his body that hit the canvas, it was his certainty. For years, he carried the regret of not understanding that boxing was more than strength. He had trained his body to dominate him, but never trained his mind to adapt. He has admitted that he was angry after the fight, not just at Ali, but at himself for being unprepared for a strategy he didn't even recognize. Sport that loss haunted him through retirement, through his spiritual transformation, and even through his historic comeback. Because in his words, he didn't just lose a title. He lost years trying to understand why he had been so easy to outthink. Foreman eventually reclaimed the heavyweight championship in his 40s, something no one thought possible. But the regret remained. He wished the wisdom he gained later in life had existed when he was young, undefeated, and invincible. Because then, the most powerful puncher in history might have also been the most complete fighter. And that version of George Foreman is the one he never got to be. Number 4, Sugar Ray Leonard. At 75, Sugar Ray Leonard is remembered for speed, brilliance, and moments that defined an era. The smile, the footwork. See, the nights where he seemed untouchable under the lights, but behind the highlight reels is a regret he has spoken about with unusual honesty. More the fights he took when he knew, deep down, he wasn't ready. Leonard was more than a boxer. He was an event. Every comeback drew millions, every return promised magic, and that became the problem. After stepping away, he kept coming back, not always for titles, not always for legacy. Sometimes because the spotlight is harder to leave than the ring itself, he has admitted that the decision to fight when his body and mind were no longer aligned was driven by pride and expectation. The loss to Terry Norris, the struggle against Hector Camacho, those weren't just defeats. They were reminders that timing matters more than courage. Sir Leonard has said the hardest opponent he ever faced wasn't Hearns, Duran, or Hagler. It was knowing when to stop. He built a career on proving people wrong, on coming back stronger, faster, smarter. So when the moment came to walk away for good, he did what champions do. He fought it. That's the regret. Not that he lost, but that he allowed the final image of his career to be shaped by fights that didn't reflect the fighter he truly was. He has spoken about protecting your legacy the way you protect your title, because once the final bell rings, you don't get another chance to rewrite the ending. Leonard remains one of the greatest technicians the sport has ever seen. But at 75, he has made peace with one truth. Even the smartest fighters can stay one round too long. And sometimes, that single round becomes the one you wish you could take back. Number 5, Roberto Duran. At 75, Roberto Duran still carries the fire that made him Manos de Piedra, stone hands. A fighter built from pressure, pride, and pure violence inside the ropes. He fought anyone, anywhere, no fear, no hesitation. But there is one moment that follows him more than all his victories combined. 2 words. No mas. The night he turned away from Sugar Ray Leonard in their rematch wasn't just a loss, but it became a shadow over one of the greatest careers in boxing history. Duran has spent decades explaining it. The weight cut, the stomach cramps, the exhaustion, the strategy he wasn't prepared for. All of it may have been true, but he has admitted that what hurts most is not what happened physically. It's how that moment was remembered. Because fighters lose, champions get knocked out, legends fall. But quitting became a label he could never fully erase. He went on to win world titles in multiple weight classes. He fought into his late career. He proved his toughness again and again, yet no victory was ever loud enough to silence those 2 words. Duran has said his regret isn't the decision itself. It's that in a single moment of frustration, he allowed emotion to override the identity he had built his entire life. A warrior doesn't walk away, and for Duran, that image conflicted with everything he believed he was. He has made peace with it publicly. He laughs about it. He tells stories. He celebrates the victories. But when he speaks seriously, you can hear the difference, because he knows that history remembers moments more than careers. And one moment, one choice made in seconds, became the only opponent Roberto Duran could never outfight.